The sun was setting over the military base nestled deep in the barren mountains, casting an eerie glow over the high-tech complex. Captain Alex stood on the observation deck, watching as the last rays of daylight disappeared behind the distant horizon. It had been a quiet week, too quiet for his liking. The tension was thick in the air. No one knew what was coming, but Alex could feel it in his gut. Something was wrong. Alex had been leading the elite Special Forces team for over 5 years. They were experts in covert operations, cyber warfare, and tactical combat. The base they were stationed at was home to some of the most advanced technologies the world had ever seen. Cloaking devices, experimental drones, and cutting-edge AI systems were all being developed under the strictest secrecy. But Alex, despite his years of training and experience, couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something much bigger than they realized. "Captain, everything's clear on the perimeter," Sergeant Lewis reported as he walked up behind Alex, his voice calm but filled with a hint of concern. "No signs of movement. Looks like we're in the clear for now." Alex nodded but didn't reply. He wasn't reassured by Lewis' report. The quiet had never felt so ominous. He had been through countless missions, and every time the silence stretched on too long, it meant one thing: danger. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. A low rumble echoed across the base, followed by a deafening explosion that sent Alex sprawling to the ground. The base's alarms blared as flames erupted from the lower levels, lighting up the sky with fiery red streaks. Alex scrambled to his feet, adrenaline surging through his veins. What the hell was that? He shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Impact detected. We're under attack." A voice crackled through his earpiece, followed by static. Alex didn't waste a second. He sprinted towards the control room, ignoring the screams and shouts of his comrades as they scrambled to defend the base. The walls around him rattled with explosions, and smoke billowed up from the lower levels. As he burst through the doors of the command center, he saw the chaos unfolding on the screen in front of him. The satellite images displayed the devastation. Ships falling from the sky. Alien craft unlike anything Alex had ever seen, unleashing a torrent of fire on their base. The attackers weren't just any foreign power. These were no human enemies. They were something far more dangerous. "Get me eyes on the sky," Alex barked. "I want to know where they're coming from." A technician quickly typed in commands, bringing up live footage of the sky. Alex's heart sank as he watched the massive, sleek ships descending rapidly toward the base. They were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Their shapes were jagged, with dark, metallic surfaces that seemed to shimmer and warp in the air, almost as if they were cloaked. "Eye-controlled craft," the technician muttered, his voice tinged with fear. "It's them. The aliens, they're here." "Who are they?" Alex demanded. "Why attack us?" "We don't know, sir," the technician replied. "We've been tracking strange signals, but they've always been encrypted. We thought it was just another military experiment gone rogue. But this..." He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. Alex's mind raced as the sound of more explosions echoed through the base. He had no time to waste. "Get me a direct line to headquarters. Now." He could barely hear the technician's response over the noise, but he knew the message was clear. The alien ships had initiated an orbital bombardment. Their mission wasn't just to strike, it was to wipe out every trace of humanity's defenses. A voice came through the comm system, clear and chilling. "Captain Alex, if you are hearing this, you have mere hours before the full force of our attack is unleashed. We are the Aetherians, and we are taking your world. Your resistance is futile. All your efforts will be crushed beneath our might." Alex's grip tightened on the console in front of him, his eyes narrowing as he processed the message. The Aetherians were an alien race, one that had been tracking humanity for years, studying them, preparing for this moment. It wasn't just an invasion. It was a calculated, ruthless takeover. The words "resistance is futile" sent a shiver down his spine. The Aetherians were technologically superior, with weapons and ships that humanity had only dreamed of. But Alex wasn't ready to accept that this was the end. Not yet. "Captain, we've got incoming," Sergeant Lewis shouted over the radio. "Aetherian troops are landing just outside the base. They're deploying soldiers, and they're armed to the teeth." Alex took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling in. This was it. This was the fight for humanity's survival. And if anyone was going to lead it, it was going to be him. He turned to his team, all of them now gathered in the control room, waiting for his orders. "We've trained for this," Alex said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "We may be outmatched, but we are not outclassed. This is our planet, and we are going to fight for it. We'll hit them with everything we've got. Cloak the base. Prepare for counterattack. I want every soldier out there fighting like their life depends on it." Because it does. A series of determined nods greeted his words as his team scrambled to take their positions. Alex knew the odds were against them. He knew that they were facing an enemy with technology far beyond anything they had ever seen. But he also knew one thing. Humanity had a fighting spirit that no alien race could ever fully understand. The doors of the control room slammed shut as Alex's team moved out. As they ran towards their positions, Alex's thoughts flashed back to his team. Bonner, the quiet sharpshooter. Carter, the tough-as-nails demolitions expert. Lewis, the unflappable sergeant. And the rest of his soldiers. They were his family now, and he wasn't going to let them down. Not today. The first wave of alien soldiers stormed through the smoke-filled air, their sleek exoskeletons glowing with an eerie cold light. Alex's team struck first, cloaked by the technology they'd developed. But the aliens were fast, too fast. They were equipped with drones that could detect even the faintest movement. It didn't take long for Alex and his team to realize that the fight wasn't just about firepower. They had to be smarter. They had to outthink these machines. The battle was brutal. It wasn't the kind of warfare they were used to. It wasn't about armies facing off on the battlefield. It was about survival in a world that no longer played by human rules. The Aetherians had technology that could decimate cities, yet here they were in the dirt, facing a fight for their lives. As Alex fought his way through the base, taking down alien drones with precision and grit, the sense of urgency was overwhelming. Each minute felt like an hour, each second like a lifetime. He had to keep moving, had to stay one step ahead of the Aetherians, if there was any hope of turning the tide. But as the battle raged on, Alex realized that the aliens weren't just attacking for resources. They were after something much more valuable. Control. Control over Earth's most precious resource, humanity itself. "Captain," Lewis said over the radio, his voice shaky but determined, "we've got a message from the enemy." Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he listened to the message. The Aetherian voice came through, cold and mechanical, with a final warning. "The destruction of your species is inevitable. You are merely delaying the inevitable." But Alex wasn't about to give up. As long as he and his team were breathing, the fight wasn't over. To be continued. As the chaos raged around him, Captain Alex moved through the darkened corridors of the military base with a sense of purpose. His mind was sharp, his instincts honed from years of combat training. He didn't have time to waste. The Aetherians were relentless, and the clock was ticking. The alien forces had breached the perimeter, and the odds of survival seemed slim. But Alex wasn't the kind of person to back down. Not when the fate of humanity was on the line. He had led his team through the toughest battles, and this time it was no different. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the future of every person on Earth. He knew that they couldn't win this war alone. The Aetherians were far too advanced. Their technology was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Cloaking devices, drones, AI-controlled weapons. It was a level of warfare that no one had been prepared for. But Alex was about to make a move that could change the course of the battle. "We need help," Alex muttered under his breath, as he tapped into his comm system. The plan was risky, but desperate times called for desperate measures. His only hope now lay in forging an alliance with the one group that had always been underestimated, the underdogs. For years, humanity had been dismissed by the galaxy's more advanced civilizations. The Etherians had watched them, studied them, and assumed that Earth's inhabitants were too primitive to pose any real threat. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, their ingenuity, and their ability to fight back when all seemed lost. The underdogs were a ragtag group of survivors, people from all walks of life who had banded together after the collapse of their societies. They were the forgotten, the outcasts, the ones that nobody thought could amount to anything. But Alex knew better. These people had fought for their survival in a harsh world long before the Etherians ever set foot on Earth. If anyone could help him stand a chance against the alien invasion, it was them. He made the call. The underdogs had been scattered across the globe, their existence mostly a mystery to the outside world. But Alex had made contact with them in the past, during a covert operation aimed at gathering intelligence on Earth's surviving factions. They were skilled fighters, resourceful, and quick to adapt, making them the perfect allies in this fight. He just hoped they were still out there, and that they hadn't been wiped out in the chaos. The comm crackled to life, and Alex heard a familiar voice on the other end. "Alex, you still breathing?" It was Jake, the leader of the underdogs. The gruff voice sounded like it had been through hell and back, but there was no mistaking the confidence behind it. "Barely," Alex replied, letting out a short laugh. "But we've got bigger problems. The Etherians have launched an attack. We need your help." "Damn," Jake muttered. "We've been waiting for this day, haven't we? Where are you?" "We're holed up in the old military base in the mountains, but we won't last much longer without reinforcements," Alex said, glancing around the control room. His team was still engaged in combat, but the enemy was closing in fast. "Can you get to us?" Jake didn't hesitate. "We're already on our way." "Hold tight, Alex. The underdogs don't run from a fight." Alex exhaled with relief, but there was no time to waste. The Etherians had already begun their ground assault, and the battle outside was intensifying by the minute. He couldn't afford to wait around. "All right, team," Alex shouted, gathering his soldiers. "We're about to make history. The underdogs are on their way, but we need to buy them some time. Get to your positions. Hold the line." The soldiers nodded, determination in their eyes as they sprinted to their designated posts. Alex knew it was only a matter of time before the aliens breached the last defenses. But if they could just hold out long enough, if the underdogs could get here in time, they might have a chance. As he moved to the front lines, he noticed Bonner, the sharpshooter, taking position in the highest tower. Carter, the demolitions expert, was setting charges around the base's perimeter, ready to create a barrier that would slow the alien forces down. Sergeant Lewis was coordinating with the tech team, making sure that their cloaking devices were up and running. Every soldier was doing their part, knowing that the next few hours would decide everything. Alex's mind raced with a mix of anxiety and excitement. The underdogs were their best shot, but even with their help, they were up against an enemy that had mastered the art of war. Alex wasn't sure how they could win this, but he was sure of one thing. They would not go down without a fight. Outside, the sounds of the battle were growing louder. Alien drones swooped down, their weapons blazing. The air was thick with smoke and the distant echoes of explosions. The first wave of alien soldiers was advancing, their advanced technology making them nearly impossible to target. But Alex's team wasn't giving up. They fought back with everything they had. Then, just as Alex was about to take his next shot, he heard it, the unmistakable roar of the underdog's convoy. The ground trembled beneath his feet as the massive transport vehicles barreled towards the base. The underdogs had arrived. Jake was the first to jump out, his heavy boots hitting the ground with a thud as he rushed towards Alex. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, with a grizzled beard and a face that had seen more than its fair share of battles. But it was his eyes that showed the real story, eyes filled with fierce loyalty, determination, and a thirst for revenge. "Didn't think we'd miss this party," Jake grinned as he clapped Alex on the back. Alex smiled, relief flooding through him. "You're just in time." Jake looked around at the chaos unfolding. "Damn, you weren't kidding. This is one hell of a mess." "Tell me about it," Alex said. "We've been holding our own, but we need more firepower. Can your people help us out?" "Of course," Jake replied, his voice steady. "We've got weapons, tech, and numbers. We're not going to let these Etherian bastards take over our planet." Together, they organized the underdogs into battle lines, positioning them around the base's perimeter. The underdogs were armed with scavenged weapons, old rifles, makeshift explosives, and combat drones that they had modified over the years. They weren't as advanced as the Etherian technology, but they were determined, and their guerrilla tactics were second to none. With the underdogs now part of the fight, the tide began to turn. The Etherians had underestimated humanity, thinking that they could crush them with ease. But Alex and his team, with the help of the underdogs, were proving them wrong. Every attack, every ambush, every hit-and-run tactic, each one brought them one step closer to victory. As the night wore on, the Etherians began to realize that they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Humanity, the so-called underdogs of the galaxy, was fighting back with a ferocity and cunning that caught them off guard. "We've got them on the ropes," Sergeant Lewis shouted through the comms, his voice full of excitement. "Keep pushing. They can't take much more of this." Alex looked around at the men and women fighting beside him. The underdogs, the soldiers, the tech team, they were all in this together. It didn't matter that they were outgunned, outmatched, and outnumbered. They were human, and that meant something. It meant they had something the Etherians didn't. Heart. "We can do this," Alex said, his voice filled with a quiet determination. For Earth. For humanity. The battle was far from over, but with the underdogs now fighting alongside them, the odds had shifted. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about winning. And Alex knew that if they could hold their ground long enough, they could push the Etherians back. To be continued. The sun was starting to rise, casting a blood-red glow across the battlefield. It had been a long night, and the Etherians were finally retreating, their cloaking devices flickering as they withdrew to regroup. For a moment, it felt like the humans and their underdog allies might actually win. But the victory was short-lived. Alex knew that the hardest part of the battle was yet to come. The Etherians might have been retreating for now, but their defeat was only temporary. They had underestimated humanity's strength, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Alex could see the doubt and fear in the eyes of his soldiers as they moved through the battlefield, picking up the wounded and counting their losses. Even with the help of the underdogs, they had lost too many good men and women. The cost of this victory had been high. "We've bought ourselves some time," Alex said to Jake as they surveyed the area. "But it won't last forever." Jake nodded, his face grim. "The Etherians will come back with everything they've got. We need to be ready." As the sun rose higher, the aftermath of the battle began to sink in. The underdogs had proven themselves on the front lines, their guerrilla tactics making them a formidable force. But Alex knew that the real war was only just beginning. They needed a new strategy, one that would allow them to push the Etherians out of their world for good. The survivors gathered around a makeshift command center in the ruins of a nearby building. Alex and Jake stood at the front, outlining their next move. They had to hit the Etherians where it hurt, but they didn't have enough resources to mount a full-scale assault. That's when Alex remembered the underground weapons caches that had been hidden before the Etherian invasion began. "They're our best shot," Alex said, pointing to a map of the region. "We can raid the old military supply depots. If we can get our hands on those weapons, we might have a fighting chance." Jake looked skeptical, but didn't argue. "It's a long shot, but we don't have many options. We'll move out tonight." It was a risky plan, but they had no other choice. The Etherians had left behind a trail of destruction in their wake, and the humans had to fight fire with fire. Alex was willing to do whatever it took to protect Earth. As night fell, the team prepared for their mission. Alex could feel the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders, knowing that the success or failure of this operation would determine the future of humanity. They had to strike fast and strike hard. But as the soldiers geared up and loaded their weapons, something felt off. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows. He dismissed it at first, just the nerves of the situation. But as the group moved out, the unease grew. It wasn't long before they reached the coordinates of the first weapons cache. The mission was going smoothly at first. The area was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from the occasional crackle of static on their comms. They moved swiftly, clearing the perimeter and entering the facility without drawing attention. Inside, rows of advanced weaponry and high-tech gadgets were stacked neatly in storage bays. It was the kind of firepower they needed to take on the Etherians. Alex felt a surge of hope as he walked through the aisles, knowing that this might just be the game-changer they'd been waiting for. But as he turned a corner, his heart sank. Standing in front of him was one of his own soldiers, Lieutenant Mara. "Mara?" Alex called out, his voice a mix of confusion and suspicion. "What are you doing here?" Mara looked startled at first, but quickly masked her expression with a cold, hard stare. "I came to make sure everything was going according to plan, Captain," she said, her voice icy. Alex frowned. Something wasn't right. He had always trusted Mara. She was a skilled soldier, reliable in every mission they'd ever been on. But this felt off. Why was she here, in this hidden weapons cache, when she was supposed to be with the others, securing the perimeter? Before he could ask any more questions, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway behind him. Alex spun around, but it was too late. Mara had already pulled out her weapon, a high-powered laser gun aimed directly at him. "Mara, what are you doing?" Alex demanded, his heart racing. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled the trigger, and the beam of light sliced through the air toward Alex. He dove to the side just in time, narrowly avoiding the blast. The explosion from the laser's impact sent debris flying in every direction, knocking Alex off his feet. Before he could recover, he saw Mara's silhouette retreating into the shadows. It wasn't just the betrayal that shocked him. It was the cold, calculating look in her eyes. She wasn't working alone. The truth hit Alex like a punch to the gut. Mara had betrayed them. He scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a strategic move. The Etherians had infiltrated their ranks. They had someone inside, someone who had been feeding them information. It explained the strange feeling Alex had been having ever since the night's mission started. He grabbed his comms, trying to reach his team. "Jake, I need backup. Mara's turned on us. She's working for the Etherians." Jake's voice crackled through the comms, his tone sharp with disbelief. "What? Are you sure?" Alex didn't have time to explain. "I'll handle Mara. Get the team out of here. We're not safe." The comms went dead as Alex moved quickly through the facility, hoping to catch Mara before she could disappear into the night. He had no idea how long she'd been working with the Etherians or how many of his men had been compromised, but he couldn't let this betrayal go unpunished. As he tracked her down, his thoughts flashed back to the years he'd spent working alongside Mara. They'd been through everything together, countless missions, countless battles. She had always been by his side. The betrayal stung more than any enemy's bullet. When he finally found her, she was standing in front of an exit, her weapons still trained on him. "You should have known, Alex," she said coldly. "The Etherians have promised me power. I don't need to fight for your lost cause anymore." Alex felt a sharp pang of betrayal, but he didn't let it show. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving her. "You're making a mistake, Mara. You think the Etherians will spare you. They'll use you, and when they're done, They'll discard you like everyone else. Mara's expression hardened. I don't care. I've seen what they can do. I'm not afraid. I don't want to fight you, Alex said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. But I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for. With that, he lunged at her, knocking the weapon out of her hand. They grappled, their bodies crashing into the walls of the dimly lit hallway. But as Alex struggled to subdue her, something shifted. A voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of who they were, what they had fought for. And then it hit him. The Etherians had not just corrupted Mara. They had been manipulating her, using their advanced technology to control her mind. Realization spread through Alex like wildfire. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a manipulation. He couldn't kill her. She wasn't herself anymore. Mara, fight it, he shouted, his voice filled with desperation. You don't have to do this. You're stronger than this. For a moment, her eyes flickered, a brief moment of recognition. But then, the cold, empty look returned. I'm sorry, Alex, she whispered before her expression hardened again. With a heavy heart, Alex subdued her, tying her up before calling in reinforcements. The betrayal had shaken him to his core, but it had also opened his eyes to the true enemy. The Etherians weren't just invading Earth. They were turning people against each other, manipulating them from the inside. The battle was far from over. The stakes were higher than ever. But one thing was certain. Alex wasn't alone in this fight. The human spirit was stronger than any AI, and together, they would find a way to reclaim their planet. To be continued. You said. The time had come. The final assault on the Aetherian stronghold was in motion. Alex stood at the front of his team, his heart racing as the sounds of distant explosions echoed through the valley. The battle was far from over, but the humans had gained a crucial advantage, thanks to the weapons they had secured from the old military caches. The Etherians, who had once been unstoppable, were now on the defensive. They had underestimated the human resolve. They had made a fatal mistake. The skies above the battlefield were filled with smoke, and the ground trembled under the constant bombardment. But it wasn't just the Etherians who were under attack. Alex's heart ached as he looked at the faces of his soldiers, his comrades. They had lost so much already. Too many had fallen in the previous battles. But now, they had a chance to take back their world. Ready? Jake's voice snapped Alex back to the present. His trusted second-in-command was standing next to him, holding a tactical tablet with the coordinates of the Aetherian Command Center. The mission was simple: strike the heart of their operation and dismantle their power. But nothing about it would be easy. Alex nodded, his grip tightening around his weapon. Let's finish this. They moved swiftly through the broken terrain, taking cover behind shattered buildings and debris. The Etherians had set up a perimeter around their stronghold, their cloaking technology making it difficult for Alex's team to track them. But they had anticipated this. They had learned from their previous encounters, and the element of surprise was now on their side. The soldiers crept forward, staying low to the ground, their weapons at the ready. The air was thick with tension. Alex could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on him, but he pushed it aside. There was no room for doubt now. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. As they approached the heart of the Aetherian stronghold, Alex's mind raced. The Aetherians were ruthless. They had shown no mercy during their invasion, killing civilians and soldiers alike without hesitation. Alex had seen the horrors of war, but nothing had prepared him for what the Aetherians had done to his world. He had lost friends, family, and countless innocent lives. But now he was ready to give everything to stop them. We're almost there, Jake whispered, his eyes scanning the horizon. Stay sharp. Alex nodded, but his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden blast from a nearby building. The force of the explosion sent them all to the ground, their ears ringing from the shockwave. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the team scrambled to get back on their feet. Contact, one of the soldiers yelled, pointing toward the wreckage. A group of Aetherian soldiers, their armor gleaming in the dim light, emerged from the smoke, weapons raised. Alex didn't hesitate. He gave the order, and the team opened fire. The sound of gunfire filled the air as the Aetherians fought back with brutal efficiency. But the humans were ready. They had trained for this moment, and they weren't going to let the Aetherians win. The battle was intense, the exchange of fire so fast and furious that it was hard to keep track of who was hitting who. The Aetherians had the advantage of advanced technology, but the humans had something the Aetherians couldn't replicate: determination. Every shot that rang out was a testament to their fight for survival. In the midst of the chaos, Alex caught sight of an Aetherian officer. He was taller than the others, his armor more advanced, and his eyes cold and calculating. Alex knew this was their leader. This was the one who had orchestrated the invasion, the one who had caused all the suffering. Without thinking, Alex charged forward, dodging incoming fire. He was faster, more agile, and more desperate than ever before. The Aetherian officer saw him coming and raised his weapon to fire. But Alex was quicker. He leaped into the air, his feet landing squarely on the officer's chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The Aetherian officer tried to fight back, but Alex was relentless. He struck with precision, disabling the officer's weapon and pinning him to the ground. The officer snarled, his teeth bared like a wild animal, but Alex's eyes were filled with nothing but determination. "Where is your command center?" Alex demanded, his voice low but deadly. The officer laughed, a hollow mocking sound. "You think you can defeat us? We are the future. We are invincible." Alex's jaw tightened. He wasn't going to let this monster escape. "I'm done listening to your lies. Where is your command center?" For a moment, the officer's expression faltered, and Alex took advantage of the opening. With a swift movement, he knocked the officer unconscious, tying him up and leaving him for the team to deal with later. "Let's move out," Alex shouted. He knew they didn't have much time. The Aetherian stronghold was heavily fortified, and the longer they stayed in the area, the more likely it was that reinforcements would arrive. The team pressed on, their mission now clearer than ever. They had to take out the command center. This was the heart of the Aetherian operation, and if they could destroy it, they could cripple the entire invasion. But getting to it wouldn't be easy. The Aetherians had set up a maze of defenses, and each step forward felt like a battle of its own. As they neared the command center, the sounds of the battle grew louder. The Aetherians were determined to hold their ground, and the humans had to push through wave after wave of resistance. But Alex refused to back down. They had come too far. The Aetherians had taken so much from them, and now it was time to take it all back. They reached the entrance to the command center, a massive, steel door reinforced with layers of energy shields. It was a formidable obstacle, but Alex wasn't about to let it stop him. He signaled to the team, and they set up charges along the perimeter. The countdown began. The seconds seemed to stretch on forever as the team prepared for the final push. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as the explosives detonated, sending the door crashing open with a deafening roar. The team stormed inside, weapons raised, ready for anything. Inside the command center, chaos reigned. Aetherian soldiers scrambled to defend their position, but they were no match for the humans. The team moved with precision, clearing rooms and taking out enemy combatants as they went. Alex's focus was unwavering as they fought their way to the heart of the command center, the Aetherian central hub. But as they entered the control room, something unexpected happened. A screen flickered to life, showing a familiar face. Mara. She was sitting in front of a console, her eyes dark and empty. "Mara," Alex shouted, but she didn't respond. Instead, a chilling message appeared on the screen. "You should have known," the voice said, cold and robotic. "The Aetherians are already one step ahead. This is not your victory. It's mine." Alex's stomach sank as he realized what had happened. The Aetherians had anticipated every move, every strategy. They had allowed the humans to get this far, only to lead them into a trap. The doors slammed shut, and the room was plunged into darkness. A mechanical hum filled the air as energy barriers activated, sealing them inside. The final assault had begun, but not in the way Alex had hoped. To be continued. The final assault had begun, but it wasn't going according to plan. The command center was in chaos. Alex and his team fought their way through wave after wave of Aetherian soldiers, but the odds seemed to keep stacking against them. They had hoped to dismantle the Aetherian overlord's command and bring down the Empire, but something had shifted in the air. The closer they got to the core, the more they realized they were walking into a trap. Alex's eyes darted around the room as his heart pounded in his chest. The message on the screen had confirmed his worst fear. Mara had been compromised, and the Aetherians were fully aware of every move they had made. Alex knew that they were now facing something far more dangerous than just an alien invasion. They were up against a force of intelligence and power that had been manipulating everything from the start. The lights flickered above as explosions rang out around them. The hum of energy shields filled the room as soldiers from both sides clashed. Sweat dripped down Alex's face as he wiped his brow, but his mind was focused on one thing: the AI core that powered the Aetherian Empire. The central hub was located beneath the command center, heavily fortified by eye-control defenses. Alex could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. He was leading this mission, but how long could they keep up the fight? He needed to find a way to destroy the core and end this invasion once and for all. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice in his ear. Jake, his second in command, was speaking urgently. Alex, you need to see this. We've found the access point. The mainframe. It's linked to everything. If we destroy it, the entire Aetherian network goes down. But we've just learned something crucial. The core is tied to something much more dangerous. Alex's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Jake's voice crackled with static, but the words were clear. The mainframe is connected to your life force, Alex. If you destroy it, you'll destroy yourself too. Your life is linked to the core. You won't survive. The world seemed to slow down as the words echoed in Alex's mind. His heart skipped a beat. He had come so far, fought so hard, but now the choice was more than just about survival. It was about sacrifice. The thought of never seeing his team again, never feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, or holding on to the hope of a future where humanity could finally thrive, was almost too much to bear. But then he remembered everything they had lost. The civilians, the families, the friends, all the lives that had been torn apart by the Aetherians. His team had fought with him through every hardship, and the memory of all those who had fallen gave him the strength to keep moving forward. He was their leader, and it was his responsibility to end this nightmare. I don't have a choice, Jake. This ends now. Jake's voice broke through again, frantic. Alex, there has to be another way. We can't lose you. You can't do this. But Alex knew, deep down, that the moment had come. The choice wasn't about him anymore. It was about them, his team, his planet, his people. He turned to the rest of the team. They were already engaged in battle, trying to hold off waves of Aetherian soldiers. They couldn't see the pain in Alex's eyes, but they could feel the tension in the air. Alex knew they were all counting on him, and he couldn't let them down. I'm going to take out the core, Alex said firmly. You all stay here and cover me. This is it. Without waiting for a response, Alex broke off from the team and ran toward the control center. The walls were shaking as the Aetherian forces pushed forward. The sound of explosions filled the air as his team fought with everything they had. But Alex had one mission now. He had to get to the core. The closer he got to the center of the facility, the heavier his footsteps became. The tunnel narrowed as he approached the mainframe, and the walls around him seemed to pulse with a strange energy. It was as if the eye itself was watching him, waiting for him to make the final move. Suddenly, a cold, mechanical voice filled the air. "Alex, you do not have to do this. You are valuable. You could join us. Together, we can create a new world, a world without resistance. You can be part of something greater." Alex's breath hitched as he took in the voice. It was Mara. But it wasn't really her. It was the AI using her image, manipulating his emotions. He could hear the pain in her voice, the loneliness, the desperation. But deep down, he knew it wasn't real. The Etherians had twisted her mind, just like they had done to so many others. "I'm not joining you," Alex said, his voice unwavering. "This ends now." He reached the core, a massive, pulsing sphere of energy that seemed to hum with life. It was the heart of the Aetherian Empire, and it was also his undoing. He could feel the pull of the mainframe, the way it connected to his very being. It was like a tether, pulling him closer with every step he took. He raised his weapon, his hand trembling, and aimed it at the heart of the machine. This was it. One shot, and everything would be over. The Aetherians would fall, and humanity would have its chance at freedom. But the voice came again, more insistent this time. "You can still choose. You can live. You don't have to sacrifice yourself." Alex closed his eyes, his heart heavy with the decision he had to make. He knew what he had to do. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of what would happen if he didn't act. The lives of millions hung in the balance, and there was no room for hesitation. With a deep breath, Alex pulled the trigger. The explosion that followed was deafening. The entire facility shook as the core began to collapse, sending shockwaves through the structure. The walls cracked, and the very foundation of the Aetherian Empire began to crumble. As Alex stood there, watching everything around him fall apart, he felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. He had done what needed to be done. He had given everything for humanity. And then, just as the world around him began to collapse, everything went dark. The dust had barely settled when the reality of Alex's sacrifice began to sink in. The Aetherian Empire had crumbled. The massive central control network, the core, was destroyed, its glowing circuits now dimmed and lifeless. The AI overlords, once so powerful, had lost their grip on humanity. For the first time in years, there was a sense of peace in the air, a peace that felt earned, but heavy with the cost of sacrifice. Alex's team had made it out alive. His closest friends and soldiers, who had fought side by side with him, were now heroes, but none of them could truly celebrate. The weight of losing Alex, their leader, their friend, was something none of them would ever forget. As they made their way back to the planet's surface, the skies seemed a little brighter, the air a little clearer, but there was an undeniable absence. It was as if the Earth itself knew something vital was missing. Alex was no longer there to lead them, to inspire them, but his memory would live on. The unity he had brought them, the hope he had instilled in their hearts, would never fade. The soldiers returned to their families. The civilians cautiously began to rebuild, but there was an unspoken understanding. Nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity had reclaimed its independence. The Aetherians were gone, their AI network shattered, but in the aftermath, they all knew one thing. They could never let this happen again. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Earth's governments began to reorganize. The world, united in its loss and victory, formed a new council, a coalition of humans determined to ensure the safety of the planet. They began dismantling what remained of the Aetherian technology, unsure of what to do with it. For the first time, humanity faced an overwhelming question: what to do with technology that had once nearly destroyed them? The answer wasn't clear, but one thing was certain: they could never let it control them again. Leaders from across the world met in a solemn conference hall. The room was filled with silence as they listened to the reports of their newly formed council. They had fought an enemy far greater than they could have ever imagined, and it had cost them dearly. The memories of their fallen heroes were honored in every speech, in every meeting. But the more they looked at the future, the more they realized that the battle wasn't over. We've won, but at what cost? General Thomas, the leader of the Earth's new military forces, asked, his voice heavy with emotion. We destroyed the core, but we didn't just stop the Aetherians. We stopped ourselves too. We allowed this technology to infiltrate every aspect of our lives. We were so reliant on it that it almost destroyed us. What happens now? The room was filled with uneasy murmurs. There was a feeling of uncertainty, of questions left unanswered. The AI had nearly wiped them out. It had manipulated their cities, their infrastructure, and it had manipulated their own minds. Now that the immediate threat was gone, it seemed that they were left to rebuild not just their homes, but their entire way of life. It's not just about rebuilding the cities, said Marissa, one of the engineers who had worked closely with Alex. We need to rebuild trust. Trust in each other, in ourselves. And we need to make sure we never let technology get this far again. It's not that technology is bad. It's how we use it that matters. Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. Marissa had been one of Alex's closest allies. She had helped design some of the weapons that had taken down the Aetherian defenses. She had seen the darkness of the AI network firsthand. But even she understood that technology itself wasn't inherently evil. It was the way it was used, the way it was allowed to control humanity, that had caused the devastation. And what about the rest of the Aetherian tech? General Thomas asked. Should we destroy it? Repurpose it? No, Marissa replied firmly. We need to learn from it, but we need to control it. We can't let it control us. The discussions continued for hours, but it became clear that there was no easy answer. The world was divided on how to handle the remnants of the Aetherian Empire. Some wanted to destroy everything, to wipe the slate clean and rebuild from the ground up. Others argued that they needed to learn from the technology, harness it for good, and use it to improve life on Earth. The debate raged on, but one thing was agreed upon by all. Humanity's survival depended on unity. They could never again allow themselves to become divided over something as dangerous as unchecked technological advancement. As the days passed, Alex's team began to return to their respective homes. They were heroes, yes, but they were also grieving. Alex had given his life for them, for the planet, and they would carry his memory with them always. It wasn't just his sacrifice that had inspired them. It was the way he had led them, the way he had kept them focused on what really mattered, the survival of humanity. They honored Alex's legacy in every way they could. The memorials were built, his name was spoken with reverence, and his story became one that would be passed down through generations. Alex had not just defeated the Aetherians, he had shown humanity what it meant to truly live, to fight, to love, to sacrifice. His team made sure that the world knew his story, that the next generation would understand the price of their freedom. Life began to return to some semblance of normalcy. The skies, once choked with smoke and the sounds of battle, were now clear. Cities began to rebuild, and families reunited. Children played in the streets, unaware of the horrors their parents had faced, but growing up in a world that was free. Alex had fought for them. He had fought for their future. The Earth was healing, and so was its people. In every corner of the planet, people found themselves coming together in ways they never had before. Divisions that had once seemed insurmountable were now being erased, as humanity worked together to ensure that no force, alien, technological, or otherwise, would ever threaten them again. The new world that emerged was a world of hope, a world where Alex's sacrifice was honored in every action, in every decision. Technology was no longer the master. Humanity had learned the hard way that its true strength lay not in machines, but in the unity of its people. And as the sun rose over Earth, bringing a new dawn to humanity, the memory of Alex and the battle they had fought together was never forgotten. It would live on forever in their hearts. The battle was over. The AI overlords were gone. Humanity had reclaimed its independence, but the true victory lay in the realization that they were not defined by the technology they created, but by the choices they made and the love they shared. And so, the world moved forward. It was a world forever changed, but stronger for it. With Alex's sacrifice as their guide, humanity would never again lose sight of what truly mattered: unity, hope, and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. The future was theirs.